I had heard of Grayson, of course. Everyone had, leading up to those days before the fall of the London Tower. We all knew how it had begun. The night of the 15th of May, 1951. The night that James Grayson's life changed forever.
Where's Lieutenant Grayson? We're going there. Lieutenant, where are you? Hey! We got a live one in here! We got... Oh, Johnny! No! Johnny.
How do you possibly top Siphon Filter, Dark Mirror, and Logan's Shadow? Those two PSP games were about as good as action games got on the platform. Not only that, but they held up to PlayStation 2 classics of the same genre. Well, the answer is Sony Bend leaves Gabe Logan behind and tackles another franchise that was just reaching a new level of popularity. And that franchise was Resistance. Resistance Fall of Man from Insomniac Games was the best of the PlayStation 3 launch titles. It connected with me on kind of a weird level. I absolutely loved the concept. World War II first-person shooter where instead of fighting off against humans, you're essentially fighting aliens, sort of. In March 2009, when Resistance Retribution was released, Resistance 2 had only been on the market for about 4 months or so. The idea was Resistance Retribution would have its sales boosted by the popularity of Resistance 2 on the PS3, and for the most part, it worked. So what do you get when you mix the Resistance property with the quality Sony Bend was putting out at the time? The answer is yet another phenomenal PSP game. This time, Resistance Retribution. Retribution takes place after the events of Fall of Man, but instead of refilling Nathan Hale's shoes, players instead control James Grayson. While Grayson's overall objective provides a slightly less epic feel to that of Nathan's, his supporting cast far exceeds anything in the PS3 outings. Fans will be happy to know that both Parker and Cartwright are back, and they narrate through a mix of in-game cutscenes, FMV sequences, and storyboards. The story focuses more on the characters' relationships instead of the global human versus chimera conflict, but it's every bit as entertaining. And remember those excellent controls from Logan's Shadow? Well, they're back, and they work just as well as they did last time. Believe it or not, but the cover mechanic has actually been improved. You see, in the two Siphon Filter games, you had to tap the analog nub towards a wall or other object in order to get Gabe to turn around. But here, you just have to move close to the wall and James will automatically take cover. It works flawlessly and allows you to pop out and take out Chimera with ease. Keeping in mind Resistance is much more of an action-based game compared to the stealth elements of the Siphon Filter series, it's really important that this element was perfected, and they nailed it. One of the only downsides to Resistance Retribution is the fact that Grayson moves really slowly. It's likely the exact same speed to which Gabe moved in the two Siphon Filter games released on the PSP, but here the slow movement is enhanced because of the cover-to-cover gameplay. Everything else though is gold and works perfectly. From mission variety to the incredible audio-visual presentation, Resistance Retribution oozes quality from every pore. Back in 2008, there was also a robust online multiplayer mode with rankings and everything else you'd expect. Now I could end the review right there and just say this was a phenomenal game. But what Sony Bend and Insomniac did was amazing with this game. They added a few extra special features. There are actually 2 additional modes that dramatically change the entire experience. The first is called Infected Mode, and the way this works is as such. You need to connect your PSP to your PlayStation 3 via USB cable, and make sure to have a copy of Resistance 2 in your PlayStation 3, and a copy of Resistance Retribution in your PSP. Then all you have to do is go into the options menu of Resistance 2 and select Infect your PSP, and Grayson will no longer follow the storyline of the core game. Instead, much like Nathan Hale from Resistance 2, he'll get infected with the Chimera virus. This means you no longer have to worry about health packs, as you'll have regenerating health. Grayson can now breathe underwater, and all the characters will react differently than they did before. On top of that, there are new intel documents scattered in all the different levels, and you can unlock the plasma grenades. And Grayson also has access to Resistance 2's new 44 Magnum. The only downside to this mode is that it only lasts for as long as your PSP is powered on. So the minute you actually shut it off, completely off, the mode disappears. The other interesting gameplay mode is something Sony Ben called PSP Plus. It works much the same way as the Infected mode, except that in Resistance 2's options you would select PSP Plus, which allows you to use a DualShock 3 controller to play through Resistance Retribution. If you have a PSP 2000 or 3000, you can even play this mode on the big screen with a DualShock. Now naturally, playing with a DualShock controller dramatically changes the game. As the auto assist disappears, the difficulty increases and the rumble feature is supported. I'd like to say that this is when you know a developer has gone way beyond the Call of Duty. These additional modes make an excellent game that much better, and what a way to end off their PSP support. Sony Ben would then move on to Sony's next portable, the PlayStation Vita, where they would develop another excellent game in another popular franchise, Uncharted Golden Abyss. For PSP owners out there looking for a great showpiece, Resistance Retribution is a title you should own.